Paid $20,000 for those 3 words. I did coaching with somebody, and that was my takeaway. I paid 20 grand to do some private coaching, and that's what I took away from it. And people were like, wow, Danielle, like $20,000 for 3 words. Those 3 words have saved me more places than I can imagine.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here with Danielle Chiasson. Danielle, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm great, Oliver. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's really good to have you here. I met a few powerhouses a couple weeks ago at that Tony Robbins training event, business results training. It was just a phenomenal experience. And one of the things that I really loved about, besides the fact that you had the most phenomenal booth there, and I'm not going to lie, I was one of the booths there as well. So a little bit put mine to shame. I just loved what you had going on.
No, yours was beautiful. You had that beautiful green background, and it made me look amazing. I'm just gonna say it was actually phenomenal.
I appreciate that, Danielle. I really do. But one of the things I kind of came over, I wanted to talk to you about was you were very emphatic about the way you were talking, not just about Tony Robbins, but about the entire kind of Tony Robbins coaching experience. And I'm kind of new to that Tony Robbins space a little bit, and there was a preconception, I suppose, that I had that it was a little bit, I don't want to use the word cultish because I'm very into coaching in general. But I think with the Tony Robbins thing, I guess the only thing that I ever saw were the highlight reels. And as you mentioned on Netflix, for example, with the whole show of I'm Not Your Guru. But when you watch the trailer, Netflix is obviously trying to promote the show and they make it look like it's a whole movement and it's a little bit, as we said, cultish. And that was my only experience of Tony Robbins, besides for the actual training, which was also phenomenal there. And I came over to you and I mentioned it to you, and you said, no, that's not at all what it is. That's the way Netflix is promoting it because Netflix wants you to watch the show, but it's totally not. So tell me a little bit about the Tony Robbins coaching and what it means for you. How's it helped your business and what people can gain from these types of coaches?
Honestly, like I told you at the event, the whole Tony Robbins thing, people who are not into the Tony Robbins realm or sphere, they think that the Tony Robbins is all about, woo woo and inspirational and motivational and, it'd be great maybe for a kid's sports team and that sort of thing. And how does that help business? Until you've been in a room with Tony Robbins, and yes, UPW, Unleash the Power Within, one of his flagship events, is all about boosting you up. And there's a lot of jumping, a lot of energy, but that's because he has done a lot of work and research into what we are fundamentally, which is energy. And so creating energy, creating movement. Look, how many people do you know that are successful that aren't moving? Take a look at that. People that are successful are moving, right? An object in motion stays in motion. As long as you keep moving and you keep moving forward, you're going to find success. Somebody just told me recently the definition of success. What is your definition of success? If I were to ask you this, Oliver, people would tell me things like, to have my house paid off, to have, RSPs, to have $1 million in the bank, whatever it is, but it's usually something tangible. But how about success being progress? If you're continuing progress every single day and you're a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday, isn't that success?
Right. So success is the journey, not the destination.
100%.
Yeah, so you're 1% farther along today, then that was a successful day, and it's kind of just each day as it goes.
Yeah, and I have unsuccessful days, and guess what? On those unsuccessful days, I'm not moving. So Tony Robbins is all about the moving, energy flowing, and really getting into that positive energy, not the negative energy, because there's the balance of life. There's good and bad, black and white, night and day. It's the balance of life. So there's positive and negative energy, and you got to tap into that positive energy and focus on that positive energy, make it intentional, and it becomes essentially a fabric of your being. And you start just operating like that by default every day. Now, first, it's very intentional. It's very a conscious effort. You have to be aware, especially if you come from a very negative environment, a negative upbringing. If that's what you've had for 20, 30, 40 years, and you're trying to unravel that and shift over into the positive. But I'm going to tell you for myself, and I was in that negative space and shifted over into the positive space. My life is, I can't even say, it's just phenomenal in comparison to where it was. And so when you love every day and you love the people that are around you, because positive attracts positive, negative attracts negative, because like attracts like. And so when you are positive, you're going to attract positive back. It just is absolutely logical. It makes sense. So coming back to the whole Tony Robbins training, it's all about really mindset, energy, tapping into your inner potential, and then translating that into business. Now, he does have a lot of great content. He's got Business Mastery, which is all about, having your business scale up into the potential of your business. So it's not just your potential, but it's also the potential of where you can take your business. But if you're not in a good space, how are you going to bring your business into a great space? It's just not going to happen. And so it really starts from within.
I also want to touch on something that you mentioned is like, if success is a tangible thing, right? So success is, let's say if I was to define success as my house paid off $1 million in the bank, let's just say, it's not going to happen that just logically, where I'm miserable, let's say, until I reach my levels of success. And all of a sudden, my millionth dollar goes into my bank account. And all of a sudden, bam, the skies open up and everything's hunky-dory and everything's magnificent. Like, it's just not going to work like that. And I think when you view it, like, I don't know what your individual versions of success look like, but I can tell you that the way that you describe the way your life is right now, once you've achieved these levels of success, it's not that you achieved some arbitrary goal and then the second it happened, your life just became better. It's because you're the type of person, from our conversations and from how I got to know you, who is constantly looking, how do I grow? How do I grow? And almost like a weird dichotomy of never being content while at the same time always being content. Does that kind of...
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to love yourself, who you are today, but just understand to know that you can be a better version of yourself every day. And so there's nothing wrong with striving to be who you can be, but still love yourself today. And so I think if you're not happy with yourself today and you're trying to be somebody else, somebody different, that you're really trying to tap into something that's not genuine, right? It's not who you are. So you got to love yourself. You got to appreciate who you are today. And then just say, I can build on this. This is okay. And if there's parts of you that you don't like, that's okay, because those are the parts you're going to work on. And that's always going to be shifting and moving. But to come back to what you were saying about those tangible goals, and like, let's say it's $1 million in the bank. Now I got $1 million in the bank. And then all of a sudden my life is going to change. It doesn't happen that way. And think about this. How many people have achieved their goals and success, essentially, as they define it, and they're miserable? There's a lot of quote unquote successful people who have a lot of money in the bank. They travel, they've got a beautiful home, and they're really miserable. And that's because success and happiness starts from within. It really starts from within. And so that the other thing that I want to point out is goals are moving targets. You get to your million, well, now you want 10 million. So you're never going to be happy if you're waiting to be happy once you achieve your goals, because that goal is always a moving target. And it should be, because if it's not, then what's going to happen once you reach that goal? You're just going to like wilt and wither away. Like, what do you do at that point? You've got nothing to drive you, motivate you, excite you. You have to have moving targets for your goals. You should always be striving for elevating yourself. I don't want to say better, because I don't think there's anything wrong with where you are today, but there's nothing wrong with elevating yourself either. Right?
Right. Yeah, better kind of almost connotes that there's something inadequate about your current position. But if you weren't where you are today, you wouldn't have the opportunity to be where you're going to be tomorrow.
That's right.
So there's actually, on the flip side of what you said there's a lot of successful people, quote unquote, that are totally unhappy with where they're at in life. And on the flip side as well. So there's a very famous Jewish parable, right? So I'm Jewish. So all of these parables, Bible stories, that they motivate me every single day. And I think there's a lot of similarities between the lessons from the rabbis in the Bible to entrepreneurship as well. And so there was this man who's very rich, as it goes, and he went to a big rabbi and he said, I've got all of this stuff, but I'm just miserable. And I feel like I'm always searching for more. And if you're always looking to get better, again, you're focusing on within, then striving for better is not a problem. But he was always looking for more stuff, more of whatever he had, and he was never going to be satisfied. And he could tell. It's like you're hungry and you're eating, but you're never getting full. And it was painful. So the rabbi said, go over to this pauper in this town or whatever, go and talk to him, tell him what you're going through, and they'll be able to help you out. So he goes and he walks over to this tiny, tiny shack, and it was the address, and knocks on the door, and the guy opens the door, and the house was an absolute mess. It was he had nothing. And he said, I spoke to this rabbi about whatever's going on. I've got all of this money. I've got everything, but I'm just constantly unhappy. He told me I should come and speak to you. I'm not sure why. And the guy said, honestly, I'm not sure why either. I'm the happiest guy in the world. And you realize like, oh, it's not about what I have. It's about how I feel within. So you can have a ton of money and be miserable. You can have a ton of money and be happy and content. You can have no money and be miserable. You can have no money and be happy. But like you're saying, it's all from within. And I think that that's something that I got from the actual training itself. And it wasn't obviously Tony Robbins there. It was, oh my gosh, the name is Steve Gill, was it?
Steve Gill, yeah.
Steve Gill, yeah. I got the message a lot more than his name, to be honest. But besides the fact that he was just a wonderful presenter and he just had such a presence, the things that he was teaching, the lessons that he was teaching, it wasn't like, and if you just like bang your chest 4 times every morning and say, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich, 5 times every single day, like pixie dust is going to fly over your head and you're going to be happy. Like that's not what he said. It was very actionable things backed by science, as well as manifestations, but that were very real. And I think that was something that I got from that, not only from talking to you, but also from seeing it for myself, is that it was just different than I think I personally thought it would be beforehand. And I think a lot of people think it is currently.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of stigma from the old way of thinking. I mean, we're moving into the information world. Well, we're moving and we're very deep into the information era right now, where things are starting to open up. People are starting to open up and we're crushing a lot of stigmas, but those stigmas still exist in a lot of mainstream. And so when it comes to even manifestation, people are like, what is this? Oh, put it out to the universe. It's going to happen. Well, manifestation doesn't mean I'm going to put it out to the universe and the universe is just going to give it to me and it's just going to magically appear. That's not manifestation. Manifestation is all about the law of attraction, where you are putting out what you're looking for. Now you're letting people know and putting it out to the universe. And that sounds woo-woo, but just essentially you're just saying to everybody you interact with, hey, whatever it is, you're yourself. I'm doing shorts. I'm in marketing. I can help your business. The more you put that out to the universe, then the more people hear it. And when you do it with such a positive energy, with your genuine energy, whatever that energy is, that's what you want to attract. And then that'll come back to you. The people that are looking for the service that you're providing, it's going to come back to you. And it's going to come back to you with the people that are your tribe, because you're putting it out there with your energy. So your energy will attract those people that are looking for your service. And that's just the power of manifestation, really. And the other thing about manifestation that people, again, they think it's woo-woo, but when you are making a mindful effort to put it out there, guess what happens? It's now at top of mind for you. So the more you manifest, which all it is being mindful awareness and taking actions to put it out to the universe, that means you're actually taking action. That means you're moving. That means your energy is moving towards that towards that goal. Well, how can it not happen when you're taking action towards your goal? Like, that's all it means. It's not woo-woo. Think about that. Right? So when you put it out there to the world, that means you're actually taking action, moving the ball forward closer to your goals. You're trying to, and you did. Look at you. I mean, you've only been doing this for less than a year, I believe, that you've been doing these shorts and providing the service, and you're growing it. But that's because you're putting it out there to the world. You're manifesting it. You're saying, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tell the world I'm doing this. I'm going to throw it out there to the universe. And now you've got me on your podcast, and you've got all kinds of people coming up and saying, hey, I want to hear more about what you're doing. This is very cool what you're doing. But if you weren't putting it out there to the universe, quote unquote, manifesting, then you wouldn't be getting that attraction back.
Speaking of, I want to take a moment to talk about what it is that you actually do. So you've got strategic success consulting behind you. Obviously, you've had your own levels of success, and you're taking the lessons that you learned in your own journey and kind of helping to impart that on other people so that they can achieve the lives that they want. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, where you started, where you're at today, and the services that you provide?
Wow. Okay. Where do I start? Okay. So I bought my first rental property 20 years ago. It was in 2003. And for 10 years, I was an amateur investor, meaning I was a landlord. I thought I knew everything, though. I thought I had it figured out. Nobody in my little world had rental properties. So I was like top dog. I had it figured out. And then I came across my first coach, and decided to make real estate a career. So I wanted to flip houses. So at the time I was with the father of my children, who's a contractor. I always was attracted to real estate. And I thought, you know what? I can flip. I can do this. And so really wanted to get into that space. So I undertook 2 years of learning. And that's when I went from an amateur investor into a sophisticated investor, because you don't know what you don't know. And then all of a sudden I realized how much I didn't know, which is why it took like 2 years of solid learning. So I kind of felt like, okay, I'm going to take the time. I'm going to go back to school, because I know real estate is big numbers. And if you don't have a clear understanding of what you're doing, you're going to increase the risk of making a mistake. So I really wanted to dive into this. I did. And then I flipped for 5 years after that, decided at COVID, I ended up pivoting into acquisitions, because when you're flipping, you're buying and selling. And I wasn't building a portfolio, and I wanted to start building a portfolio. So then I went into acquisitions, bought what I didn't want, which is all distressed properties, because that's what I knew. I just defaulted into that and went into properties that needed some help and some uplifting. And then also smaller properties, because when I was flipping, I was doing single family conversions into duplexes, and then realized I don't want these. They're like, I just don't want this. So we wanted to do multifamily. In the process,
what was your objection to those?
No, just because you grow as you go along the real estate journey, you grow. So you start out single family, maybe you're just landlording, and then you decide to do a couple of flips, maybe burrs, right? Where you buy, renovate, rent, and refi. And then that way you get a little bit of equity by doing that. You get a lift. And so I just went through that, and then I'm just going on my journey. Now it's like, okay, doing these small properties. One of the biggest challenges for me is time, as it is for everybody, truthfully. But as I'm growing, I'm like, all of these smaller properties are taking up a lot of my time. So now I just want to do them on bigger properties. So I want to have a bigger property, 12, 20 doors, and have, 4 or 5 or 6 of those instead of having a whole bunch of single families, right? And so I think at that point too, it's just going to be easier for me on the admin side, because when you have a lot of single families or duplexes, triplexes, then you have that many bills to pay, that many roofs to fix, that many. It's just way more time in managing all of that. So having a larger unit, then I can have a property manager on site. They can deal with all the day-to-day, just spit me a report, and I can move from being a property manager into an asset manager. And then I can use my time that I'm freeing up to do other things like launch strategic success, which is what we're doing. Yeah.
So what are some of the lessons that you've learned along the way that you're giving over to your clients?
Oh, there's so many of them. One of the ones that everybody will hear me say, I don't know if I've been on a podcast where I haven't said it, but trust but verify. Trust but verify is a big one.
I love that.
Yeah, it's huge.
I love that.
It's huge. It's massive. I paid, again, it's a story I tell a lot. I paid $20,000 for those 3 words. I did coaching with somebody, and that was my takeaway. I paid 20 grand to do some private coaching, and that's what I took away from it. And people are like, wow, Danielle, like $20,000 for 3 words. Those 3 words have saved me more places than I can imagine. Because look at the end of the day, you can go into business and be very pessimistic and question everybody and not trust anybody and question everything they say. What I do is I trust what they say, but I verify it. So, and I don't take anything at face value. I do want to have some sort of proof of concept or proof of what they're saying, especially if it's a big decision. So I don't believe that you should assume that what people are telling you is correct, because sometimes people think they're telling you the right thing and maybe it's not. And it's just an error on their part, and it's not intentional. And I do believe, like, in the greater good of people, like, I'm very positive. And I don't think people try to harm you intentionally. It does happen though. And so by trusting but verifying, it allows you the space to be able to go into business and do what you do every day, and not just business, personal too, right? I mean, these are fundamentals. So you can go in, you can take up face value what they say, but then just double check it before you move and act on it.
I mean, like, as you're saying, like $20,000 to learn those 3 words, like, there's a reason that when you said that, I was like, bingo, that's it. Mm-hmm. Because I don't think I've spent 6 figures on coaching. In fact, I'm almost positive I haven't, but I've certainly spent 5 figures on coaching. And some of it's worked out. All of it's worked out in some capacity. Not all of it was worth the price that I paid for it. And I think that the challenge that a lot of the time real estate agents, but any entrepreneur in general has, is because there are, I don't want to say bad eggs, but I will say people that can't live up to the expectations. There's a lot of them out there. The standard is not very high, unfortunately, with a lot of coaches in general, or marketers, honestly, to be honest, or real estate agents. The standard is not always very high. And I think the challenge is, because I work with real estate agents will fall into one of two buckets. Let's say three. Brand new, because we're going to include brand new agent. Brand new agents are just happy that somebody takes them seriously a lot of the time. Somebody wants to reach out, say, hey, I'd be interested in coaching you. And they'll have the conversation because they're, let's say, a week in the industry and somebody's talking to them and taking them seriously as a real estate agent. Let's put that to the side. Let's look at the other two buckets. You've got people who are so jaded from subpar marketers and coaches, and so they don't want to listen to anyone or anything. And I understand that. That's a human emotion. I get that. And then you've got the folks that will take it over the top. And Sandy is a very, very good friend of mine, Sandy McKay. And he embodies the second one, where it's, listen, I understand that there's a lot of people out there that aren't, let's say, worth their salts. I'm going to hear this person out and see. And if they're not legit, I'm going to make a very quick decision and be like, no, that's it. My trust hasn't been verified. But if my trust has been verified, I'm all in. Let's go. And what Sandy did, the way that we actually met, is I reached out to him. I said, hey, I've seen your video, something like that along those lines. And he looked at my stuff, saw that there was some alignment, said, let's have a call, had a call. He realized it was worth another conversation. And then he kept on trusting and verifying. And then one conversation led to another. And now we're talking all the time. And now we're working together in a lot of different capacities. And it started because he was the kind of person that trusted, but verified. So if he would have been entirely jaded, I would have been out of a great friend and partner, and he would have been out of what I think and hope is a great friend and partner as well. And that is a high level skill. That is a very top performer type skill, is to be able to trust but verify. It's very convenient for these salespeople on the phone to say, listen, you got to spend money to make money. How long are you going to be in the same place for? And give you all of these lines, which is going to make you want to just say yes and just take my problems away. But the ability to keep that perspective, not be entirely jaded to say, I'm going to say no to everybody, but also not be entirely wooed that I'm going to say, I trust you, I'm not going to even verify it. It's a very high level skill to be able to keep perspective, stay moderate between both of those extremes and make that decision. And I think that if you pay $20,000 to learn that, I think it's worth every penny.
Every penny. 100%. Here's what I'm going to tell you though, Oliver, about the whole thing around people being jaded. It's because they didn't verify. They trusted but didn't verify, right? So what happens is I have a marketer who comes to me and pitches to me, says, hey, I can do this for you and I can increase your following and I can do this and I can do that. And I'll get you 20 sales calls booked in a week and whatever. And then I drink for free. Right. And I drink the Kool-Aid and I go, great, that's amazing. Awesome. How much? And then I give them $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, whatever it is that they're asking. And then all of a sudden I get one sales call booked and I get maybe an increase in following of 20 people when they said they were going to give me 5,000 people. And then all of a sudden I'm trying to call them and they're not answering the phone.
Yep.
Well, the reason why I'm jaded is because I got taken. But the jaded, look at, people don't take responsibility for their part when things go sideways on things. So if something happens that things aren't going and I'm not getting the end result that I'm looking for, this wasn't what the end result that I was expecting. Well, there's two things you can do. You can distribute the responsibility externally, right? By way of blaming others, right? And jaded people will do that. They'll be like, oh my God, that guy they took my money and I shouldn't have trusted him. And they're scammers and and then they just blame externally. So they push off the responsibility externally, but highly successful people will go internal instead of external and they'll accept responsibility. So if that was me, I would be like, holy crap, how the heck did that happen? Like, how did I just get taken there? What happened there? And then I will dig deep to figure out, wait a minute, I trusted without verifying.
Yep.
I should have asked for referrals. I should have looked at, what other accounts are you managing? Who are your clients? Show me, show me some stats. Can you show me in real time the back end of things? Right. And if a marketer, if I'm saying, show me some stats of some of the ads that you've put out and they won't give them to me, then that's a red flag. Right.
Yeah.
But then what happens is by having that lesson learned, by going internal, by accepting responsibility for my part of that situation, rather than extending the blame externally, then I can learn something and grow. So the Sandy McKays and the Danielle Chiassons out there, I mean, we're constantly working on ourselves. Coming back to the whole Tony Robbins thing, it starts with you. You can't grow your business being jaded. You can't. And if you're jaded, you're just blaming everybody else. You're not accepting responsibility when things aren't working out for you. So it's going to be very, very hard to grow. But I'll tell you what, it's really hard for people to accept responsibility because they feel like they failed. They feel like they're vulnerable, and they feel like people will think less of them. So too many people care about what others think of them. That's another big one. And so, yeah, I think trust but verifying saves a lot of that.
Yeah.
It really fixes a lot of that for people to kind of put it into a better perspective.
Brilliant. Simple. So simple, but so brilliant.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've mentioned a couple of times, you said the word attract, right? And I want to talk about the type of person that attracts success, because you were very deliberate on the wording. It's not about me going out there and always chasing it all the time, which there certainly is an element of chasing, but there is also an element of attraction that I think oftentimes is overlooked. And it's like, just do the things that are quote unquote banal, like, I don't know, in the words of the great Jordan Peterson, make your bed in the morning. Like the kinds of things to attract the type of person, be the type of person that attracts the type of people you want to attract. What are those people, and what does that mean to you?
I'm not really sure how to answer that question. Honestly, I think energy just knows where it wants to go. I don't really know that you get to choose that. You get to craft who you want to be. That is a choice. That is an absolute choice. And if you want certain types of people in your life, then you have to mirror them, because the energies will be attracted to each other, because like attracts like. And so if I want to attract Tony Robbins, the best way to attract Tony Robbins is to be like Tony Robbins. If I want the Olivers in my life, then I have to be like Oliver. And how many times do we come across people and we go, oh my gosh, I love that person's energy. I love their style, or whatever it is that you like about them. If you just appreciate that from a distance and you never learn to grow and adapt that, then you're not going to attract that. You'll always just be on the sidelines appreciating it from a distance. So I think if there's something that you see, a quality that you see in somebody else that you really like and appreciate, then it's a choice to start folding that into your own way of being. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, like, I'm big into introspection. I think humility and perspective and moderation, all of these are phenomenal traits that I think are so essential. And I think the ability to introspect, let's say, look at somebody else, and instead of just be like, oh, I want to be where they are, and just look at them without thinking about how can I actually make that happen. If you find a Tony Robbins or a Danielle or whoever it is that you want to emulate, instead of just looking from the sidelines, like you said, and just admiring them and then moving on with your day, think about what it is that they do. What things would you like to emulate? That's right. And the way that I would answer that question, piggybacking on the way that you answered the question, is once you've really introspected exactly what it is that you love about that person, make a concrete plan of how you can actually make that happen. So if somebody always presents themselves really well, like they're a good dresser, besides the fact that you're just dressing in nice clothing, let's actually look at that. What does dressing well actually represent? Well, it represents a discipline that every day I'm going to get up ready to conquer the day. So get up every day and be ready to conquer the day. If that's not something that's important to you, if you're attracted to the type of people that can wake up in, I don't know, cargo shorts and like ripped t-shirts, then that's not something that you need to be emulating. So I think this is a great way of emulating the people that you want to emulate while still being 100% true to yourself. But it starts with the introspection and the wherewithal, the perspective to see what exactly do I love about that person and how can I make that happen in my own way.
There's the difficulty in that, Oliver, is that there has to be a certain level of self-awareness. There has to be a certain level of self-honesty, which is really, really hard for people, because we can justify our actions all day long and say, why would I change? Why would I want to try to be that person? You're not trying to be that person. You're trying to incorporate a character trait of theirs that you appreciate and you love. And if you really love it that much, why would you not want to be that as well and emulate that as well? And so, but we justify everything that is hard work so we don't have to do the work. I'm going to repeat that. We justify everything that is hard work so we don't have to do the hard work. Well, I don't have to get dressed like that just to get attention. Oh, but from a distance, you're looking at that person and you're noticing them and you appreciate that they dress and present themselves well. So why not be that person? If you appreciate that from across the room, go, wow, I wonder how I would feel walking into a room dressed like that. Anybody who knows me, I always show up. I dress up. I'll show up always. And I'll tell you what, I had a party. I threw a party for the multifamily conference that I spoke at this year. And then just because it was a big conference, and there was like 3,000 people or so there. And so I said, you know what, let's throw a party the night before. So I threw a party. And I was busy setting up on the Friday. I threw a party on the Friday. I was setting up the booth and getting everything ready for the conference on Friday at the conference center. And I was running late because I had a speaker dinner to go to, and then I had to go to my party. And so I actually ended up not changing, which was very unlike me. Like, I'd rather be late. I'd rather change and be late than not change and show up on time. But I was so freaking late. I didn't have time to even do that. So I showed up. I was still dressed nice. I mean, I had, my pants and a blazer and all of that, but it just wasn't a party dress that I actually wanted to wear that night. I showed up, and I'll tell you what, Oliver, everybody in that room showed up. Everybody in the room showed up because they know I show up.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Like, wow, look at this beautiful people. Like, I was like, damn, you guys are making me look bad. Like, this is a first for me, but it was amazing. I just loved it. And so that is what you want to do. And then people noticed that. I noticed it. I saw them. I'm like, look, they made an effort. They showed up. Like, it was amazing. And so if you want to really feel good about yourself, as good as the people that you see that you appreciate from the sidelines, then you got to do the work. You got to do the work. Success is not easy. I'll tell you, the people that aren't successful are the ones that are justifying saying, yeah, I don't need to do that. I don't need to go on 3 trips a year. But deep down, they wish they had the option to choose that. And you don't even have the option to do that because you're justifying your way out of even trying to get that for yourself.
Right.
Wow, I think we went really deep.
We did go really deep there. You know what? I'm like, as we're talking about this, I'm like, there's kind of another, there's other directions that I think we could take this, but I think anywhere else that we go on this one would just be not doing justice to what we just spoke about. So let's do it anyway. I want to talk about accountability for a second. So one of the pillars in your coaching program, you have strategic business coaching, and you also have accountability-based coaching. So accountability is something that I'm proud to say I'm totally drinking that Kool-Aid, because I think that accountability and mindset also, by the way, but I'm going to put mindset to the side right now. Accountability is so much more important than a lot of the strategy I think that's coached on. And the reason I say that, even as a coach that primarily focuses on strategy, myself being, is I think if you're not the kind of person that's going to hold yourself accountable or find ways to hold yourself accountable, either internally, I'd say actually both internally and externally, all the strategy in the world, all of the strategy in the world isn't going to take you anywhere, because you have to have the discipline and the accountability to actually execute on it, from my perspective. This being such a vital pillar in your coaching styles, what does accountability mean to you, and why is it something that you wanted to exclusively focus on?
I think, so people holding themselves accountable is one of the hardest things to do. I struggle with it too. So it's not unique to you. And I think a lot of people, that word you just use, discipline, self-discipline, I think it's very it has a negative undertone, and it draws people down, because like as soon as you don't do something that you said to yourself that you were going to do, then immediately it's like, I don't have the discipline. And the more you say that to yourself in your head, the more you buy into that. And the more you just ingrain that into your belief system. And the belief, that's a whole nother thing that I could go off on.
Right. That sounds like the manifesting thing that we were speaking about before as well.
Well, it is. But so the manifesting and the belief is very different, but your core belief system is what will guide your decision making for anything you do in your life. 100%. And so you have to rewrite that belief system if it was written in a way that is misguiding you. And so a lot of times what people don't understand is that you are a product of your environment, whatever you're born into. So I give people up until the age of 20. Like up until the age of 20, you're very easily influenced by the people in your life that you were born into and the circumstances that you're presented to deal with, without having the proper coping skills, by the way, to handle most of the things that are thrown your way at an early age. After 20, though, man, it is a choice. You can undo all of that if you need to. It is a lot of work. But if you have a belief system that you adapted by parents or siblings or aunts, uncles, grandparents, or just the environment caused you to have a belief system that is not serving you, you have to do the very hard work to rewrite that, so that that belief system, which is your guiding tool, I mean, it's your beacon that's going to guide you to every decision you make. So if you don't set that straight, you will always be misguided. It's going to be always very difficult for you to make the decisions to guide you moving forward into the direction that you actually want to go in. Right. And so I feel so strongly about this that you can just hear it in how I'm telling you. Like, I can't stress this enough, how important that is. And you have to be able to get vulnerable in order to reprogram that. Because you have to first be able to say, I'm not happy with my belief system, my core belief system. I'm not happy with who I am. That is one of the hardest things to say.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have to be very honest and get very vulnerable. And that's why people stay where they're at, because, well, three reasons. One, it's easier. Then you have to deal with it. It's easier to just justify how you are, who you are, and just say, that's how I am. It's one of the things I hate the most. Oh, that's just who I am.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're choosing that. You're choosing that. No, it's who I am. No. You're choosing that. You're choosing not to make an effort to be a better version of yourself or a different version of yourself. I hate the word like better and all of that.
No, I understand. But when people say like, I can't help it, it's.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, geez. Because it's like you can't change it now. Let's say that. Fine. I'll grant you can't change it now. But you can take a step towards changing it now. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, here's one of the interesting things. Going back to some Jewish lessons that we have. So there's one of the pillars of Judaism is the concept of like repentance, right? You're never so far removed. If anything happens, like you can always, there's a process to proper repentance, and it's part of it's about feeling bad and saying that you're going to move forward. But the question is like, why are we saying move forward? Like, why don't you say, I'm never going to do it again? Because let's say if you do the same thing again and again and again, you're not like, wouldn't that mean that you haven't moved forward? And the answer is no, because if your process of moving past and unlearning the skill that got you into this mess in the first place is, I'll try to do better next time. And then you do, but then you slip up. But then each time you get back on that horse, you're exercising that muscle. And I think maybe from the outside, again, it's this recurring theme of success being within, the Tony Robbins mantra, really. If my version of success is, I'm not going to do this thing again. My true repentance is, I'm not going to do this again, and I never do it again. That means if I never do it again, I've succeeded. And if I have done it again, I failed. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. If you've moved closer towards not doing it again, that doesn't mean that you actually never do it again. That means that you exercise that muscle towards never doing it again. And it sounds exactly like that's what you're talking about, where it's the internal discipline. And to say I can't help it, like, no, maybe you can't totally abolish this character that you have right now, but you have to take a step towards abolishing it at some point in the future. Does that kind of embody what you're saying?
Oh my God. Okay. So can I unpack that a little bit? I think I need like
Please.
an hour.
Please do.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to tell you. First of all, I don't like the word failure. So let's unpack that, because you said fail a few times in there. I don't use the word failure because I call them learning lessons. At the end of the day, there is no failure. There's lessons to be had. So you said, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do it again. But if I do it again, then I failed, and then it's just not meant to be, or whatever. Right.
Well, just to clarify, because I was saying that's the incorrect mindset to have.
100%. 100%. I agree with you. But what I'm saying is that's exactly to validate what I'm saying. It is the wrong mindset, especially if you're using the word fail. I don't like the word fail. And so that's how, like, okay, here's another one that I'm just going to mention this. I'm not going to go on a tangent on this one, but language matters. The words you use matters. So instead of saying failure, say it's a lesson. Then all of a sudden you reframe it. And then that's how you can start getting your mind straight. Okay. So I'm not even going to dig into that, but I'm just going to put that out there. So changing the language and changing the things that you say to yourself in your mind will make a huge impact on your mindset and help you progress to an upgraded version of yourself. Right. So that's number one. Don't use the word fail. I don't like using any word that's negative. So that's number one. The second thing that you talked about is, okay, I'm not going to do it again, but if I do it again, then I failed. Like, that is an all or nothing thinking. So the way we think is there's like a spectrum.
Yeah.
Right. So you can be all negative, or you can be all positive, or you can be balanced in the middle. Right. And so when you have like a very strict way of thinking without no room for movement, and it's so rigid, you're bound to fail. You're bound to not succeed and achieve what it is you're looking to achieve, because you're like, I need to do it this way. So you want to go from 0 to 100 without anything in between, which is very unrealistic. You can't just switch like that. You have to travel down that path. And especially when it comes to habits. So I'm 46 years old, soon to be 47. Damn it. Ugh. So I'm in my 4th decade, very well into my 4th decade. And I have had habits that are decades long. And so if I've been doing the same thing over and over and over again for 20, 30 years, I'm not going to be able to just flip a switch and do it overnight and switch it overnight. It just can't. It's not realistic to think that way. If I have ingrained that into my psyche, so deep into my psyche, and that's my way of thinking or doing whatever it is you want to change, maybe you want to change your mindset, maybe you want to change your habits. Either way, if it's my way of thinking or doing that I've been doing for decades long, it's going to take me that long to undo.
Right.
And the longer you've been doing something one way, that's not exactly how long, but it's going to take you a long time. So if I've had a habit for a year, I can undo that habit very easily. I can probably undo that habit in a week or two. But if I've been doing it for decades, it's going to take a few years. Like,
okay,
that's
I was going to clarify that, because I was going to clarify that. So it's about, it's not like I've had a bad habit for 11 years, therefore it's going to take me 11 years to kick it.
No.
But if I've had a habit for a year, it might take me, let's say, a day. And then if I've had a habit for 10 years, it might take me 10 days. So again, numbers assigned, but proportionately will take you longer.
Exactly. And so you have to give yourself, so let's talk about that again. Like, going from 0 to 100 to change a habit is just really unrealistic. And that's what they say. There's different studies out there. Some people say it takes 21 days to change a habit. Some people say it takes 90 days to change a habit. I think in what's important, it's not how many days, because I firmly believe that it's about how long you've had that habit for, how long it takes you to unwind that habit. And so what's important is the consistency of trying to undo it. So here's how it works. You're going to have a habit. You want to change it. So you start doing something else instead. By the way, you have to replace it instead of, like for me, I smoked years ago. I smoked when I was in my 20s. The way I quit that is I replaced the cigarette with a water bottle. So every time I went like hand to mouth, like cigarettes, it was with a water bottle instead of a cigarette. And so that was the habit, but replacing it with a water bottle instead of a cigarette. So sometimes there's that, you might not be able to just quit the habit, but replace it with something else. Right.
Gotcha.
So what you have to do is in the beginning, it's an awareness. Okay, I don't want to do this anymore, or I do want to start doing this. It's an awareness. So when it's like something I want to start doing, then it's I'm going to start doing it. Then you intend to do it tomorrow. You wake up tomorrow, you get busy, you forgot. It's like, darn it, I didn't do it. And then people get down on themselves, say, I can't do this. That's not true, because you're in phase 1 of the change process, which is awareness. Part 2 is then implementing it. So let's say I want to quit drinking coffee. I went through a phase of that. So I wanted to quit drinking coffee. I was flipping over to tea instead of coffee. But I got up in the morning. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a tea. I get ready. I go downstairs, and then I make myself a coffee because it's my habit and it's my default. You got to understand, habits are defaults. They're like, you just do them like without even thinking, right? Yeah. So then as I'm making the coffee and putting the cream in, I'm like, darn it, I forgot. I wanted to make a tea, not a coffee. Okay, now you're into phase 2 because now you're catching it while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right? And then phase 3 is then when you catch it before you do the default and switch into the habit. So there's like 3 phases. First is awareness. Second is you catch it as you're doing it. And then third is actually catching it before you're doing it.
Right. Almost like awareness, corrective, preemptive.
Yeah. So it's a process. And then what's important, more than how long it takes to undo the habit or create new habits, what's important is the consistency. Keep mindful. And what happens is people are trying to change too many things at once. So they're trying to change too many things and they can't be consistent in any one thing. And so that's where it becomes extremely difficult to actually see any success. So pick one thing, stay consistent with it for 3-4 months, and then you'll change that. And then pick something else, do that for 3-4 months. And then you'll get to the goals that you want to get to. But when you try to do too much at once, it's very difficult to stay consistent with all of them.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say is the number one thing? I'm sure that there's more than one thing, but you've worked with a lot of people. You've had your own levels of success. And I think what's really interesting is besides for the success that you've had both internally and externally, I think what's interesting is how you're able to impart your knowledge and your wisdom onto other people. So what is the number one recurring theme that you're seeing in terms of mistakes that people are making in their own business on their journeys to success?
The number one thing, well, again, like not verifying, trusting without verifying is a big one. It really is a big one. They put too much. The other thing is that they do is because let's say you get together with a business partner, but you don't verify your business partner. You just take them at their word, right? And it's not just with business partners, but I see it a lot with business partners where this happens, but where people bring on somebody into their fold, into their business, and they delegate, but they just wipe their hands of it because they just trust. You still need to verify. So then what happens if that other person doesn't follow through on their end, then they go, oh, it doesn't work. I did, okay, partner, because then you can, bring resources together. You can elevate together. Yeah, that doesn't work. I tried that. Well, it's because people forget when you delegate, you're not washing your hands. You still own it. So you still have to manage it. And you still need to check in with your partner or whoever's working for you. Like so many real estate investors, they hire a property manager and then things go sideways with the property manager, but they never had any conversations or check-ins with their property manager and they have to stay in touch with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Would you say that starts out of a place of desperation?
No.
No,
it's time. There's a lot. I mean, business owners are busy. So it's time management and the lack of time. I struggle with this too. There's so much going on, right? That you have to really select what's more important, but you have to prioritize things, right? But don't let the things that are lesser of a priority completely fall off because they're lesser of a priority. Just learn to manage them a little bit differently. So maybe when you first start off and you have a handful of properties, you check in with your property manager weekly. Well, then you end up with, you triple your portfolio. Now you have 3 times the properties. Well, now you have 3 times less time.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe you check in with your property managers now once a month instead of once a week. Right. Mm-hmm. Or bi-weekly. And so you have to constantly shift. But what happens is people let things drop off, right? And that's not okay either, because I firmly believe that being at the top of your business, you're the one that's creating the culture. You're the one that's responsible for everything within it. And you have to make sure that if you don't have the time, then you have to delegate to someone else on your team or someone else in your inner circle to check in with that property manager for you. And that's where you get so you have the C-level people in business, and then you have the management level, and then you have the employees. Well, when you first start out in business, there's you, which is C-level, and employees, right? But then as you grow, you have to start bringing in managers. And then that's when you start trusting them and getting them to check in with all the people that you don't have time to check in with anymore that you used to be able to do yourself. But what happens is people skip that step, and then they just say, oh, okay, you know what? I trust that property manager. I don't have to. And then they let it go. But then it's not a problem until it's a problem.
Yeah. So the formula is trust but verify. And then once you've done that, then delegate. And I think you said the biggest mistake is that people are not initially trusting but verifying, in which case they're delegating either the wrong things or to the wrong people.
That's right. Yeah. So by trusting without verifying, they're just and delegating without management, things go sideways for sure. Yeah. Because when you delegate and you don't manage, then there's no communication and everything. Like, communication is the glue. I've always said this, like, to me, communication, if you look at every aspect of your life or your business, is like like one of those snowballs. What are they called? The balls of snow that you shake.
Snowball?
Right?
Snow globe.
Snow globe. Thank you. I'm like, snowball doesn't sound right. Yeah, snow globe. So snow globe. So if you look at every part of business is a particle of the snow in the snow globe, communication is the glue that binds it all together. And so if you lose the water that's in the snow globe, everything just falls to the bottom and it doesn't work anymore. And so you need to always have that communication open, and that is done through management. Like, you have to manage your people, and you manage them through communication.
Got you. Okay, Danielle, this has been an absolute blast. I really appreciate you coming on to the show. Everybody listening to this, I'm sure, is wondering, how can I reach out to this person? So how can people reach you and learn more about you and your program?
Yeah, the easiest way to do it is, if you want to go to strategicsuccessconsulting.com, you can hit the contact us tab there and reach out to me that way. Or you can DM me in Instagram or Facebook. Just shoot me a DM. It's Danielle.Chiasson for Instagram. It's Danny Chiasson for Facebook. So just come and find me on socials and connect with me there.
Okay, and we'll put all your links underneath in the descriptions and the bios, everything, so people can reach you as well. So once again, thank you so much, Danielle, for coming on the show. It's really been a wild ride we've had. I think we've kind of digressed in some awesome ways. We went to places I didn't expect, and I just had a really great time. So thank you for coming on.
I had a great time too, Oliver. Thank you for having me.